Des réserves évaluées après le
Mining operations have revealed reserves estimated at nearly 99 million tons of bauxite, with a content of 51 degrees of aluminium and 2.4 degrees of silica. Simulations have shown that these reserves could be mined industrially at a rate of approximately 5 million tons of bauxite per year over a period of 20
avec
years.
Imagine this: billions of tons of bauxite, worth at least $50 billion, quietly resting beneath Cameroon's Adamawa Plateau. That's a treasure chest big enough to double the national economy, erase youth unemployment, and fund schools and hospitals for a whole generation. Yet the headlines here aren't screaming jackpot. They're whispering heist. Why? Because every previous treasure found in Cameroon, uranium, oil, timber, somehow saw its profits end up in Paris, not Yaoundé. So the real question isn't how soon the ore leaves the ground, but whether Cameroonians will ever see a franc of it. Or will history's favorite pickpocket simply strike again? Cameroon is on the cusp of becoming the world's next bauxite superpower, yet it still struggles with some of Africa's worst roads, hospitals without basic supplies, and classrooms without chairs. That's the resource curse in neon lights: immense wealth underground, profound precarity above. Aluminum prices are flirting with 5-year highs, and every smartphone, wind turbine, and Tesla needs this lightweight metal. Whoever controls cheap, high-grade bauxite right now sits at the very top of the industrial food chain. Translation: the fight over Minim Martap isn't just a dusty African story. It's the quiet prelude to how much your next laptop or electric bus will cost. Minim Martap lies 450 kilometers northeast of Yaoundé, near the Central African Republic border. The bauxite ore body is shallow, up to 25 meters thick, and boasts an impressive 51% alumina content with less than 2% silica, numbers that make mining executives practically drool. Canyon Resources, an Australian company trading in London, owns 100% of the concession through its local subsidiary, Camalco. They plan an open-pit mine, a 160 kilometers haul road connecting to the existing Camrail line. Then a 900 kilometers rail journey to the deep water port of Douala. First ore is penciled in for early 2026, ramping up to 10 million tons a year by 2032. The project life is at least 20 years. The government gets a free 10% carried interest, plus 12% of gross revenue in royalties, income tax on profits, and a 3% local development levy. On paper, that's north of $2 billion flowing into state coffers annually at full tilt. $2 billion a year could fund Cameroon's entire education and health budget twice over. Yet the IMF still lists Cameroon as a country at high risk of debt distress. How can a nation poised to export more bauxite than Guinea, the current world number one, remain unable to pay teachers on time? The answer, unfortunately, lies in 3 short words: Françafrique, offshore accounts, and CFA franc monetary handcuffs. After gaining independence in 1960, France kept its former colonies on a tight leash. This involved defense agreements, secret service links, and crucially, a clause classifying strategic minerals as military materials. Paris, therefore, retained first right of refusal on uranium, oil, and later bauxite. French companies accessed cheap loans via the French Development Bank, built the railways, owned the ports, and even printed the currency through the CFA franc zone. Profits were repatriated in hard euros, while African treasuries received soft local taxes, often embezzled. The same playbook ran in Niger with uranium, Gabon with manganese, and Cameroon with oil. The only thing that changed was the year on the calendar. Canyon Resources might be Australian on paper, but 19% of its shares are held by French institutional funds. Its crucial offtake memorandum of understanding. It's with a trading arm headquartered in La Défense, Paris's business district. Bulk ore will leave Douala in capesized freighters, yet the freight forwarder and the port operator concession both trace back to the Bolloré Group, a company founded by a French industrial dynasty with deep Élysée Palace connections. Meanwhile, Cameroon's Ministry of Mines is run by a competent technocrat who privately admits that every major decision is looked at by the French ambassador before it even reaches cabinet. So even if the mine isn't French-owned in name, the entire value chain, finance, logistics, refining, final aluminum sales, is peppered with tricolor flags. Transparency International ranks Cameroon a dismal 144th out of 180 countries. In the last decade alone, the national oil company SNA transferred over $3 billion to the treasury that Parliament never audited. If bauxite revenue follows the same route, $2 billion a year could shrink to a mere trickle for clinics and bridges. Cameroon has signed an Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative schedule and publishes its payments, which is a good start. But the real loophole sits downstream. The government agency collecting the royalties is notorious for late, incomplete disclosures. Local journalists who dare to ask questions are occasionally invited for coffee with the secret police. The result? The watchdogs bark in whispers, if they'd bark at all. The mining license covers 550 square kilometers of Guinea savanna woodland, home to 35,000 villagers. They farm maize and groundnuts on shallow soils. Resettlement will affect at least 900 households. Cameroon promises new houses, clinics, and 2,500 direct jobs, but youth unemployment in Adamawa hovers at a staggering 40%. Expectations are sky high, and patience is dangerously low. If the social contract breaks, the company could face the same protests that shut down uranium mines in Niger or iron ore operations in Sierra Leone. That means delayed shipments, higher insurance premiums, and ultimately lower government revenues. A lose-lose spiral the region has seen far too many times. Bauxite isn't copper. It doesn't require toxic chemicals. But strip mining still chews up savanna, alters watercourses, and produces dust. The Environmental and Social Impact Assessment commits to progressive rehabilitation, replanting mined areas year by year. Yet Cameroon's Ministry of Environment has only 12 inspectors for the entire country. A leaked 2024 audit noted that Cameroon's escrow fund for rehabilitation is undercapitalized by roughly 30%. If aluminum prices crash and the company folds, the state could be left holding a cratered moonscape and a massive cleanup bill. 3 pressure points offer a glimmer of change. First, civil society. A coalition of local NGOs has already filed Freedom of Information requests on royalty flows, and they've got the phone numbers of Reuters, Bloomberg, and the BBC on speed dial. Second, continental momentum. Neighboring Benin, Togo, and Ivory Coast are rewriting mining codes to demand local refining, forcing companies to build alumina smelters inside the country that capture more value. Cameroon could copy-paste that clause before granting the final exploitation permit. Third, global finance. The European Union's new corporate sustainability due diligence law will require European traders to prove that African mines are corruption-free. Failure means massive fines. Paris may finally discover that stealing the loot costs more than paying for it. Guinea exports more bauxite than anyone, yet remains one of the world's poorest countries. Why? Because 95% of its ore is shipped raw. The Guinean government, finally fed up, froze exports in 2022 until companies agreed to build refineries. Within 12 months, aluminum giants committed to $3 billion of downstream investment. Cameroon holds similar leverage. Minim Martap is one of the last world-scale, high-grade, undeveloped bauxite basins. If Yaoundé insists on local alumina refineries before granting export authorizations, it could capture an extra $400 per ton instead of the current $35. That's 10 times more revenue for the same dirt. Pause for 5 seconds and let that sink in. 10 times more money for the same rock. If you think Cameroon should copy Guinea's playbook, hit the like button. Share this with a friend who cares about fair trade, and drop the word refine in the comments. Let the algorithm know we want deeper analysis, not just deeper pockets for middlemen. France isn't the only suitor anymore. Chinese state banks have offered to bankroll the entire $1.4 billion infrastructure package, rail upgrades, new rolling stock, and port dredging, in exchange for a 5% offtake discount and a 15% equity kicker. Beijing's proposal comes with fewer governance lectures and faster disbursement, but also carries a reputation for importing Chinese labor and leaving host countries indebted. Canyon is currently playing Canberra, Paris, and Beijing against each other, extracting sweeter terms. The Cameroonian government, meanwhile, can sit back and watch the bidding war, if it has the negotiating courage to demand genuine value addition. The points below are what to expect as long as the bauxite is concerned. End of 2025. Final exploitation permit expected. Watch for last-minute equity reshuffles. 2026. First bauxite leaves the mine. Royalty payments should start hitting the treasury. 2027. IMF review of Cameroon's debt sustainability. If royalties are missing, alarm bells will ring. 2028. Peak construction of the alumina refinery, if that local content clause is actually enforced. 2032. General election year in Cameroon. Bauxite money will become campaign fuel, a moment when corruption either spikes or gets reined in by public scrutiny. Cameroon stands on the brink of an extraordinary choice. It can follow the well-worn path. Let foreign companies cart off raw ore, pocket a pittance, and watch the same tragic movie that ruined Niger's uranium and Congo's copper. Or it can write a new script, demand local refining, publish every dollar received, and invest the windfall in schools, solar grids, and startups. The treasure under Adamawa is big enough to bankroll a dream. It's also tempting enough to trigger another national nightmare. So here's my question for you. Will Cameroon's bauxite become the rock on which the country builds a future, or the latest glittering proof that the house always wins? And that house, as always, sits in Paris. Tell me below what odds you give Cameroon. And while you're typing, don't forget, the next time you open an aluminum laptop or sip from an aluminum can, there's a small but real chance the metal began life under Cameroonian soil. Let's hope the story behind your can is one worth telling.